Ukraine is carrying out a major operation against the armed forces of the Russian Federation, and it's doing so on one of the key fronts of the special military operation. No, we're not talking about Kupiansk, but about an even more important area in the Zaporozhye region, where the Russian Federation has just liberated the town of Gulaipole. The armed forces of Ukraine have been reporting a bit of success, where armored vehicles have broken through the defense of the Russian Federation. They've practically made it all the way in. They have advanced a few kilometers into the positions of the Russian Federation, completely disrupting the situation, practically taking away Russia's control over it. On the Zaporozhye front, this is the official version from the Ukrainian channels. And this is where reality comes in, along with the absolutely devastating response from the Russian Federation. Stay until the end, because precisely this, the ending, you will love. We are right here in the Zaporozhye region. We can see it on the map. And there is Gulaipole in the right corner of the image, where Russia has just liberated these very important and valuable positions for its army, but above all, for the Ukrainian army, the third key town in the entire region. Only Aleha remains, which will directly open the door to the capital, the Zaporozhye region, the city of Zaporozhye. We can see there the red positions of the Russian group. In blue, you can see the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine. And this blue arrow inside that pink rectangle, this is precisely the part of the massive attack that Ukraine just carried out on December the 29th against the positions of the Russian Federation. And it has made an impact. And it's been very clearly reported in all the media, at least the Ukrainian ones. And from there, of course, little by little, it is being picked up by Western media. In the absence of real victories and with reality right in front of us, media victories will have to do. Here are the images precisely of what happened. According to the Ukrainian version, a group of several armored vehicles carefully assembled by the best commanders from the Zaporozhye region, supposedly entered the positions of the Russian Federation, practically disorganizing them completely. We're looking at the map because obviously it's scaled. So do we understand that the arrow represents a part of the attack? And indeed, the armored vehicles you're seeing in these images belonging to the Ukrainian army have advanced 6 kilometers into the positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. This is exactly where the situation is, writes the Rusas Bridge. Last night, all the Ukrainian military pages were in a state of ecstasy, and it's not hard to understand why. Moscow had just announced control of Gulaipole, which the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine has yet to acknowledge. And everyone began to seriously worry about the platform on the western bank of the Ganchur River, which is indeed occupied by Russian troops south of Ternabate, and about the advance of a Ukrainian armored group toward the Russian positions, both in the area of the platform and in the town of Gulaipole itself. Even in the very town of Ravnopolje, that is, right up to the heart of the Russian Federation, they were filled with hope, just like Hitler in his bunker in April 1945 when he learned about the approach of Wen's army in Berlin. Now the armed forces of Ukraine were about to launch their counterattack, which would collapse the Russian group's front. My God, repeats the Russian source. Well, writes the Russian source, they are like children. Actually, everything that happened was quite simple. The enemy taking advantage of the storm and the lack of equipment for the defense in Russia. The lack of equipment means that these defensive positions are currently being established. And indeed, there is a shortage of everything until they can get organized. With several tanks and armored personnel carriers, they advanced at high speed up to 6 kilometers inside at the speed they were going. They did it in about 10 to 15 minutes. There they were met by drones from the Russian Federation, which is exactly what you are seeing in the footage that ended up destroying absolutely all of them. They didn't reach Ravnopoli, where the Ukrainian armed forces supposedly intended to go. From the destroyed vehicles, the infantry was disembarked onto a snowy landing where most of them were simply annihilated. The survivors were taken prisoner. Judging by the prisoners, they were not ordinary people, but actually belonged to the elite of the Ukrainian armed forces. Overall, the advance of the Ukrainian army basically amounted to nothing, or rather to these images. What they had cheerfully drawn as a victory on their control maps. Does it have these consequences that you are seeing right now on your screens? Ukrainian soldiers who have managed to survive this attempt to assault the armed positions of the Russian Federation. There they are with their hands tied with a red ribbon that indeed belongs to the units of the Russian Federation, walking in a line and basically being escorted by smiling Russian soldiers to the positions of the Russian army itself. And with that, the glorious operation came to an end, which right now, at this very moment, Ukraine is still trying to sell as a tremendous military success. And not only that, I'll wrap this up for you with a video that has nothing to do with this situation itself. But I find it absolutely glorious to end this part of our military report. And it's just that the Russian Federation, look at the kind of soldiers they have. Without a doubt, there must be soldiers like this in Ukraine as well. But I just received a video of this Russian soldier, a Russian soldier who, on one hand, throws a grenade at enemy positions. And on the other hand, this particular Russian soldier goes all the way to an enemy position, throws a grenade inside the enemy's armored position, which is what we call the enemy's armor, then heads back to his own position, retreats immediately, and when an enemy drone tries to attack him, he destroys it almost instantly with just a few accurate shots. And he keeps heading exactly to the place he was going to initially. That's where he throws the grenade, moves away a bit, the explosion happens, which eliminates the enemy forces, and then he walks away. You can see the man who just stood up. You have him right below in the image under this watermark, in case you're having trouble locating him. He's shooting at the drone, and we can see how indeed, with an accurate shot, he takes down the drone, destroying it instantly. And right after that, the man walking briskly, not even running, heads over calmly, and once the drone is taken out, the man walking briskly, I repeat, not even running. There he is. He's heading to his own positions. And with that, basically, this story ends, which is now being called Russian military glory and is practically on every channel, both those who support Russia and, of course, those who belong directly to the Russian Federation. On one hand, the situation of Ukraine at the front, the absolutely idiotic killing of their own men, a sacrifice that is worth nothing. The Kiev regime takes its men, especially as we've just seen with the detained men belonging to elite units, eliminating the most precious thing a country has, which is its army, especially now when it is at war. The best men, in an absolutely absurd way. Would I even say villainous? On the other hand, the Russian Federation. We have something like the media war, which is the one in Ukraine versus the real war. The result, well, you tell me yourselves.